Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
So today, we're tackling building not just successful companies, but companies that are like built to last, enduringly great ones. And you've given me a lot here. We've got Good to Great by Jim Collins, some supporting articles and research, and even I see some of your own notes sprinkled in here.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and Collins really lays out some interesting frameworks for understanding what separates the good from the truly great.
Yeah, so our mission is to kind of distill all this down to its essence. What are the takeaways that you can use to try to build a company that doesn't just win today, but wins for decades to come?
That's the goal. And I think you'll be surprised by how some of these concepts, simple as they may seem, can really have a profound impact.
Great, well, let's dive in. The first big idea that jumped out at me in Good to Great was this thing called the Hedgehog Concept.
Yeah, the hedgehog concept. It's really kind of a brilliant concept when you think about it. It's the intersection of three circles. What can your company be the absolute best in the world at? What drives your economic engine? What's that key profit per X that you can find? And what are you truly passionate about?
So it's not about setting goals or chasing the latest trends, but about understanding your company's unique potential and aligning your actions with that.
Exactly. You know, the companies that go from good to great, they're not necessarily the ones with the most resources or the flashiest products. It's the ones that deeply understand what they can be the best at, where they can find their economic sweet spot, and what they're truly passionate about.
Can you give me like a concrete example? I'm always a learner by seeing how these things play out in the real world.
Yeah, so let's look at Walgreens. They shifted their focus from profit per store to profit per customer visit. They realized convenience was their key differentiator, so they were happy to put a bunch of stores in a small area. That was their thing.
So they identified profit per customer visit as their key economic denominator and built everything around maximizing that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the passion piece, too. It's actually more important than you think. Kimberly-Clark is a great example. They moved away from traditional paper products and went all in on consumer goods like diapers, and they were passionate about it. One executive said, "Diapers have more charisma than paper."
I mean, that's great, and it's funny, but it worked for them.
Yeah, it sounds funny, but that genuine enthusiasm helped them become a leader in that market.
Okay, I get that. So, but how do companies actually discover their hedgehog concept? It sounds like a very deep process.
It's not about some aha moment or overnight transformation. Collins recommends forming a council. It's kind of an informal group of people who meet regularly and they debate and dialogue, always guided by those three circles. They challenge assumptions, confront brutal facts, engage in what he calls the Stockdale paradox.
Okay, wait. The Stockdale paradox, what is that?
The Stockdale paradox is the idea that you need to confront the brutal facts of your situation, but at the same time, you need to maintain this unwavering faith that you'll prevail in the end. It's like balancing realism with optimism.
Wow, yeah. So you figured out your hedgehog concept, but then what? How do you actually translate that into action?
Well, that's where the second big idea comes in. A culture of disciplined freedom. It's not about stifling creativity with tons of rules. It's about having disciplined people who can operate with freedom, but within a clearly defined system.
So finding that sweet spot between structure and autonomy.
Exactly. He uses the analogy of a pilot. They have a lot of freedom up in the air, but they operate within a strict set of rules and procedures.
So how does that actually look in a company? Give me an example of a company that did this well.
Well, Abbott Laboratories. They combine financial discipline with a culture that encourages creativity and innovation. They were really ruthless about cutting unnecessary costs, but they also empowered their employees to experiment and come up with new ideas.
So they were rinsing their cottage cheese while still fostering innovation.
Precisely. And rinsing the cottage cheese might sound like business jargon, but think about it. Are there places where you're spending money on things that aren't essential?
Oh, yeah. I think we all do that. It's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah, it is.
Well, so rinsing the cottage cheese, it's like the leaders set the tone by eliminating those unnecessary luxuries themselves.
Yeah.
We saw this with Wells Fargo, where the CEO froze executive salaries, got rid of corporate jets, even banned plants from the executive suites because they were too expensive to water.
Now that's commitment.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that there's a difference between a culture of discipline and a tyrant who's just trying to control everything.
Yeah. You want the discipline to be like ingrained in the culture, not just dependent on one person.
Right. Rubbermaid is a good example of what not to do. They had a very strict CEO, but when he left, the company declined because the discipline was tied to him, not the culture.
So it's not about a superhero CEO, it's about building that system, right?
Yeah.
So we've got the hedgehog concept, we've got a culture of disciplined freedom. What about the role of technology in all of this? Technology plays a huge role, right?
Yeah, that's where things get interesting. The good to great companies, they were definitely tech savvy, but they didn't view technology as like this magic bullet. They were selective about what they adopted.
So it's not just about getting the latest gadgets.
Not at all. They saw it as an accelerator of momentum, not a creator of it. They
Yeah.
were very picky, only embraced technologies that directly aligned with their hedgehog concept.
Can you give me an example of what that actually looks like?
Sure, Walgreens was an early adopter of intercom technology back in the 80s. Not because it was cool, but because it allowed them to link all of their stores and provide even better customer service.
So they were amplifying their existing strengths.
Exactly. And another example is Kroger. They were early adopters of barcode scanners. And it might not sound as sexy as some other innovations, but it revolutionized their inventory management. They used that to fund their expansion into superstores.
It's about finding the right tools for the job, not just adopting technology for the sake of it.
That's it.
It seems like these ideas, they're all starting to connect. The hedgehog concept, the culture, the tech. Is that what the flywheel and doom loop are all about?
You're getting it. The flywheel and doom loop are kind of the culmination of everything we've talked about.
Okay, well, walk me through it. What exactly is the flywheel effect?
The flywheel effect is about consistent, disciplined effort that builds momentum over time. Think of a giant, heavy flywheel. Takes a lot of effort to get it moving at first, but as you push consistently, it builds momentum. Eventually, it spins effortlessly.
So it's not about one big push, but a series of smaller, consistent efforts.
Yeah. The good to great companies, they didn't achieve success overnight. They focused on accumulating tangible results step by step. Not through big programs or flashy acquisitions. They got the right people on the bus
Yeah.
and just builds and
I
builds.
think I'm getting the picture. So the flywheel is all about building momentum through action. What about the doom loop? What makes companies get stuck?
The doom loop is the opposite. Erratic, inconsistent action, never building any real momentum. These companies, they chase fads, they try to force change through acquisitions, they change direction every time the wind blows.
Oh, it sounds exhausting.
Yeah, it is. It's the death knell for any company that wants to be great.
So the flywheel is about progress. The doom loop is about a lack of focus. Got it. But what happens once a company achieves greatness? How do you sustain that and make it last?
Well, that's the final piece of the puzzle for today. Going from good to great to built to last. This is where Collins's work really connects across his books.
Okay, well, how does build to last build on what we've been discussing in good to great?
Think of built to last as the sequel. Building a great company is like a prerequisite. Built to Last digs into the principles for companies to achieve lasting greatness, that ability to thrive for decades, even centuries.
Okay, so what are some of those key principles?
Well, one is what he calls clock building, not time telling. It's about building a company that can outlast any single leader or any single product cycle.
So it's not about relying on a charismatic CEO to save the day.
No, it's about the system, the culture, the core values that will guide the company even when the founders are gone, even when the market changes, even when technology comes in and disrupts everything.
So building something bigger than any one person.
Yeah. And that's where core ideology comes in. It's like defining your core values and purpose beyond just making money. It's these fundamental beliefs that guide the actions of the company, that inspire its people.
So it's like this guiding philosophy, this North Star that helps you navigate.
That's a great way to put it. Think about companies like HP with their HP way, or Merck, a very profitable pharmaceutical company, but they decided to develop and distribute a drug that cured river blindness, even though they knew the people who needed it couldn't afford it.
So they were putting their values into action.
Yeah, and those decisions, those moments where a company lives its values even when it's hard, those are the things that build trust and loyalty,
Right.
right?
Right. It's about building a company that stands for something more than just profits.
Yeah.
So we've got the hedgehog concept, the flywheel, the doom loop, clock building, and this core ideology. They're all starting to fit together.
You're getting it. And there's one more piece from Built to Last that's crucial. It's the genius of A&D.
Oh, yeah. The genius of A&D. It's about finding that sweet spot, right?
Yeah, the genius of A&D is about embracing paradoxes. It's about being able to have your cake and eat it too. So it's about embracing both purpose and deep profit, continuity and change, freedom and responsibility.
So it's not about choosing either, but finding a way to have both.
Exactly.
This has been really interesting. It feels like we've been given a roadmap to build companies that can really last.
It is a powerful framework, but there's one more element, one that's really crucial for progress, and that's BHAGs.
BHAs. Big, hairy, audacious goals. I've heard that before, but I'm not sure I totally get it.
A BHAG is a goal that's so big, so ambitious, so seemingly out of reach that it forces you to think and act differently. It's something that inspires people, that creates a sense of shared purpose.
So it's not just about incremental goals. It's about going big, pushing the limits of what's possible.
Think about JFK's famous declaration in 1961. We choose to go to the moon in this decade. And he goes on to say, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Oh, that's such a great example of a BHAG. It was impossible at the time, but it inspired a nation, and we did it.
We did. But the thing is, they have to align with the hedgehog concept and core ideology. Collins gives the example of Boeing getting into the commercial jet market. It was audacious, but it made sense for them.
So it's not just about setting ambitious goals, but setting ambitious goals that fit your company's identity.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance.
Well, wow, we've covered so much. From the hedgehog concept to BHAG, it's been an amazing journey through all these big ideas.
It has. We've laid a foundation for understanding how to build a company that not only succeeds, but sustains that success and becomes an enduring, great organization.
I agree. But I'm wondering now, what about the companies that didn't make it? What separated the good to great from those that struggled? What can we learn from their mistakes?
That's a great question, and that's what we'll dig into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll take a closer look at those comparisons and try to understand what went wrong, the pitfalls to avoid, and the lessons to learn from their missteps. Get ready for some aha moments and maybe even some oh no moments.
We can't wait.
All right, so let's shift gears now and talk about those comparison companies, the ones that, stayed good or in some cases faded away completely.
Yeah, we need to understand, what went wrong. What can we learn from their missteps? Almost like the flip side of the coin, right?
Exactly. The comparison cases, they offer some valuable lessons, and one of the biggest pitfalls we see is a lack of discipline, especially when it comes to staying within the three circles of their hedgehog concept.
So they knew what they should be focusing on, but just couldn't resist straying from that path, like giving in to temptation.
It's a good way to put it. Take R.J. Reynolds, for example. At one point, they were the top tobacco company in the world, but then the Surgeon General's report came out linking cigarettes to cancer. And obviously, this created a huge challenge.
Yeah, that must have been a turning point for the whole industry.
It was. And while other tobacco companies like Philip Morris adapted and stayed true to their kind of redefined hedgehog concept, global brands and not-so-healthy consumables, R.J. Reynolds went on a wild diversification spree.
So instead of doubling down on what they knew, marketing and selling tobacco products, they started branching out, like they panicked.
It does seem that way. They bought a shipping container company, an oil company, things that had nothing to do with what they were good at. They were chasing growth, but without any real strategy or alignment with their hedgehog concept. One analyst even said they were like country boys with too much cash in their pockets.
Ouch. But I get the analogies, like they lost sight of who they were.
Yeah, and that's a common third we see. They become obsessed with growth as the goal, but without the discipline to focus on profitable, sustainable growth that fits within their hedgehog concept. Growth without that foundation, it's like building a house on sand.
So it's not just about growing, but growing in the right direction.
Exactly. Another example is Great Western, a financial company that went on this crazy acquisition binge. Finance, leasing, insurance, manufactured housing all over the place.
Trying to be everything to everyone.
It rarely works. Meanwhile, their comparison company, Fannie Mae, they had a really clear understanding of their hedgehog concept. They knew they could be the best in the world at anything related to mortgages, and they went all in on that, no distractions.
And what was the result of that focus?
Well, Fannie Mae, they almost tripled their revenues during the period Collins looked at, while Great Western, with all their acquisitions, they only grew by like 25%. And then, because they spread themselves too thin, they ended up losing their independence in 1997.
Wow, what a contrast. It really highlights that discipline, that focus.
It does, but that's not always easy, is it? You've got Wall Street, you've got all these pressures to constantly show growth.
Right, these short-term pressures can be intense.
They are. But the good to great companies, they figured out how to manage that pressure. They stuck to the flywheel. They knew that true success, it takes time.
Well, how did they do that? How did they balance those short-term demands with the long-term vision?
Well, Abbott Labs, they had a really clever approach that I think is a great lesson for anyone. They would basically tell Wall Street that they expected to grow at, say, 15%, but internally they set much higher goals, maybe 25, even 30%.
So under promise, over deliver.
Kind of, but there's more to it than that. See, they kept this list of projects they called blue plans,
Hmm.
basically entrepreneurial ventures that were aligned with their hedgehog concept, but that hadn't been funded yet.
Oh, so they had these ideas ready to go.
Right. And towards the end of the year, they would selectively fund enough of these blue plans to exceed Wall Street's expectations, but still fall short of their own more ambitious goal.
Clever. They kept Wall Street happy while also investing in their future.
Yeah, they found this balance between the short term and the long term. Their comparison company Upjohn, they just tried to pump up the stock with empty promises.
Yeah.
Abbott became a consistent performer. Upjohn ended up getting caught in that doom loop.
Yeah, it's like they were trying to take shortcuts instead of building something solid.
And another area we see this is with acquisitions.
Right, because we talked earlier about how good to great companies use acquisitions strategically.
Yeah, they use them to accelerate their existing momentum, but it seems like the comparison companies didn't have that same discipline.
Yeah, so instead of using acquisitions to strengthen their core business, they were using them almost like a Band-Aid.
Exactly, like
Right.
trying to patch a leaky roof instead of fixing the foundation.
It makes you think about all the pressure there is to grow quickly, to expand into new markets.
It's so easy to get caught up in that and lose focus.
So it's about having the discipline to say no, even when everyone is telling you to say yes.
It's about having the courage to resist those quick fixes and to focus on building something truly great that can last.
It's amazing how these small differences can lead to such dramatically different outcomes.
It really is. And those differences, they become even more pronounced when we look at how those good to great companies transition from good to great to built to last. They didn't just find success, they built companies that could endure anything.
So how do they do that? What are those secrets to building a company that stands the test of time?
Well, that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll delve deeper into those principles from built to last and see how they can be applied to any organization, big or small.
I can't wait. All right, so we've covered so much in this deep dive. The hedgehog concept, the flywheel, clock building, BHagers. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. We've seen what separates the good from the great and the great from the truly enduring companies.
Yeah, and we've seen how those principles play out in the real world. But now I'm thinking, okay, what does all this mean for me? How can I apply these ideas to my own work and life, even if I'm not, running some giant company?
That's the big question, right? And the good news is that these principles, they apply to everyone. Big companies, small companies, nonprofits. It doesn't really matter. The fundamentals are the same.
So this isn't just for CEOs and executives.
Not at all. Anyone can benefit. Whether you're just starting out, leading a team, or running a whole company, the ideas of disciplined thought, disciplined action, having that faith that you'll succeed these can help you achieve amazing things. It's about vision, purpose, and staying focused on those goals, even when things get tough.
I love that. So where do we start? What's the first thing?
Self-awareness. Before you can even think about building a great company, a great team, a great career, you need to understand yourself. What are you passionate about? What are your strengths? What really drives you? What gets you out of bed every morning?
So it's like finding our own personal hedgehog concept.
Yeah.
That sweet spot where passions and talents, economic drivers all come together.
Exactly. And just like those companies we talked about, you might need to go through a process to really figure that out. It might take some exploration. Talk to people. Try different things. Be open to new experiences. The more you know yourself, the better you'll be at building a life and career that really fits you.
That makes sense. So once we have a better sense of our own hedgehog concept, what then? How do we start building our own flywheel?
Action. But not just any action, right? It has to be disciplined action, the kind that aligns with your hedgehog concept. So break those big goals down into smaller steps. Focus on consistent progress, even if it's just a little bit each day, and celebrate those wins along the way. It'll keep you going.
Oh, and what about those stop doing lists? Sometimes progress is about letting go of things that are holding us back, right?
Absolutely. We've all got those distractions, those bad habits. Sometimes you have to clear the clutter to make room for the things that really matter.
It's about being intentional, making sure our actions match our goals.
Right. And don't be afraid to be ambitious. Once you've got that direction, think about those BHAs, those big, hairy, audacious goals, the ones that really challenge you.
Yeah, but we want to make sure those BHAs fit our hedgehog concept, right?
Absolutely. They should be goals that you're truly passionate about, things that you really believe you can achieve. They should excite you, maybe even scare you a little, but they should feel possible.
This is great. It feels like we've been given a set of tools to help us build not just success, but a life that really has meaning.
And that's what it's all about. These concepts, they can help you build a great company, sure, but they can also help you build a great life. It's about knowing yourself, what you want, and how to get there. And it's about embracing the journey every step of the way.
So to everyone listening, here's something to think about. What's your hedgehog concept? What can you become the best at in the world? What are you truly passionate about? Whether this deep dive has sparked some ideas and given you a framework for your own journey from good to great. Until next time, keep diving.